How do you get over public speaking nervousness? And this is a question for beginners. You know what? I'll never forget one of my more embarrassing moments in life. I was a senior in high school, and I was participating in a YMCA program called Youth in Government. This was an opportunity for me as a 17 or 18-year-old to be able to go to the Minnesota State Capitol and sit in the House of Representatives chambers. And each one of us represented or played the role of a state representative. In advance of this legislative session, or this mock session, we drafted our own bill and got some co-authors, and it was basically an opportunity for high school students to participate in the government process of making legislation. It was a fantastic experience. I've encouraged my daughters to consider it, especially for anyone who has an interest in politics, government, law. What a wonderful experience it was. In fact, it was so great that I came back later and served as an advisor at Youth in Government. But I'll never forget this one day when it was my job to introduce my bill. I stood up in the Minnesota House of Representative chambers, and I looked around the room, and I knew all about my bill. I had spent hours talking about it. But at that moment, I froze. I remember thinking, I don't have the words to say, and all I could do was look around at all the different eyes looking at me, and I simply did not know what to say. I think I gently mumbled something like, my bill is about blank. I think it was a civil rights topic. My bill is about civil rights and ensuring equal rights for all, etc., and kind of stumbled through the general topic. I did a terrible job. And in fact, it was so bad that one of the co-authors who was sitting next to me, another high schooler, came up to the microphone for me and then saved the day by explaining further what the bill was about. But I'll never forget how I just froze. It was at that moment I realized public speaking is a skill that is developed. It's not something people naturally have. In fact, studies have shown that the people who think they're great public speakers often are oblivious, and they can actually be the worst. It's the public speakers who take serious the nervousness and the difficulty of speaking in public, and they want to be interesting to the listeners. It's those people who often do best. But here's what I learned after that incident. I needed to figure out how to become a good public speaker. I got a book by Dale Carnegie that helped with it a little bit. Back then, we didn't have the internet, so I had to go to, this is about 1993, I had to go to the library, and I went to the Dakota County Library and spoke with the librarian, and I said, I need to learn about public speaking. What do you recommend? And she said, oh, you know what, there's a local group called Toastmasters that you can join. And she said, I'll give you the information there. Back in that day, every librarian or library kept a record of the local community groups with contact information. So I reached out to Toastmasters. I was the youngest one there, but it was a bunch of people who just met on a regular basis to try to get better at public speaking. And one important requirement in Toastmasters, I shouldn't say requirement, but encouragement, is to speak at every meeting. You don't have to say much. You might just say your name, or you might give a little 30 to 60 second comment on something, and they'd throw you softball questions that would make it very easy. And here's what I learned. The only way I could get comfortable with public speaking and overcome the nervousness was through practice. Through doing it so many times that the brain reworks its wiring, and you start to realize, or you start to develop the habits and the routines in your brain on how to do it. Now, I still get nervous. I actually think that that's great because it heightens the energy within the body. It helps the brain become more in tune with what it's going to say. But Through practice, you learn not to fill the blank space with ums and ahs. And you might practice having some pauses, some moments of silence that then emphasize whatever you are about to say. And there are other techniques that you can learn, but the beginning skill is just getting up there and doing it in practice. And so my encouragement to anybody who's looking at improving in public speaking is find an opportunity to speak as much as possible with as low of stakes as possible, because practice is what allows you to build the skills needed. There is no way to really cut corners in this that I've found. There are plenty of skills that can be developed, but it all starts with practice, and then those skills build on that. You can go visit aaronhall.com/free, enter your email address, and you'll get access to exclusive educational videos. You can also subscribe on YouTube. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to add them into the comment section below or send them by email.